Thank you so much for joining us today from all around the world and all different time zones. So welcome to another episode of Design Makeover. So this is a show where we take designs from the community. We look at some simple kind of tweaks and tips that we can use to optimize them on best design practice. And then I'll share some tips and tricks along the way. So my name is Karin. I am the design and education lead for Canva Creators. Canva Creators is a program we're developing at Canva where we are inviting creators from around the world to participate and create templates that we then review and pop into our library, and those creators can earn royalties from download. So it's super exciting project to work on. We have done with our creator community a few of these design workshops. So I'm really excited to do it today with you guys. We have 3 designs that we're going to go through today. The first design I'm going to get up and share with you is from Jason. Let me bring it up. Jason McBride, are you in the chat at all? Let me know. Oh, and before I start, I should just say, if you have any questions at all, just pop them in the Q&A panel. Jess will let me know and make sure to ask me. And I'm so happy to answer any questions that you have as I go through. If there's anything I'm doing that you want a bit more information, please just pop it in that Q&A panel. All right, so I'm going to bring up Jason's design. Let me know, is that working for everyone? Excellent. This is a design that Jason has submitted. I really loved how bright and engaging it is. It's a really good message. It is a poster design. Judging from what I can see in the poster, it is for a movement, a campaign called Party Safe in Summer. And so it's against violence. And, the message I'm seeing from this poster is that, the kids are going to attend parties this summer, and this is an initiative to try and make it as safe as possible. So no guns, no drugs, no violence. So I thought it was a really lovely message. And I really loved the vibrancy of it. I thought he had done a really great job of kind of capturing that sense of summer party vibes and then coupling it with this really strong message. So today I'm going to take this design and we're going to look at applying just some really key kind of design principles that you'll see you'll be able to apply to any of your designs, and it will immediately kind of lift it up. So the areas I was going to kind of look at with this design, I've given myself a little cheat sheet, is I'm going to apply consistency, hierarchy, and alignment to this design. And we'll see when we look at those 3 key areas, what we can do to kind of lift this design to the next level. So I'm going to duplicate the page so that we can go back and have a little look-see where we've got to. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here so we can start to look at this design. So the first thing I'm looking at here is the first thing I would do is look at consistency. So in this particular design, it's really fun, really loud, with a strong message. What I would say is sometimes when you're trying to do too many things at once, it sort of almost loses its power. So the first thing I do is kind of look at what can I consolidate and what can I make consistent. So the first thing I had noticed is that we've actually got different fonts all in the same design. So we've got League Spartan, we've got Open Sans, we've got Lato Heavy, and we've also got this Party Safe Summer. So the easiest thing for me would be initially is to actually just grab, I'm just going to ungroup those so I can grab them all. Grab each of the different fonts and actually just consolidate that down to one font. I think that way your eye isn't as confused. Also, I would say with these fonts, I wouldn't say you always have to have just one font, but all these 3 fonts are very similar. So I think it's just easier to consolidate them all to one particular font. So maybe let's go Lato. So as much as you probably can't see that big a difference, what it just means is like they have the same heights and they have the same letter forms, and it just kind of is going to make it easier for your viewer to kind of look at it. The next thing I would look to is probably removing, there's a lot of different things. For now, I'm just going to remove this rectangle. I can see what Jason's doing here. He's trying to kind of give hierarchy. He's trying to give importance to this message. But I think we could probably do that in a way where we're maybe using size rather than bringing in an extra element where we've already got this quite, busy image in the background. So again, what I often do with my designs, like I'll work on them to a point and then I start to see what can I simplify and what can I consolidate. So for now, I'm also going to take the effect off this and just keep it all very clean. I'm going to go white. I'm literally looking for things that I can make similar. And I'm going to use size rather than the rectangle around it. So what I might look at here is we could do Lato heavy, so make it a little bit thicker. And I'm going to just go up in size because this is our main message. So this is where hierarchy comes in, where we're trying to make sure a viewer knows what order to read the information. So their eye goes to the most important piece of information first, and then it travels through in the order that you want it to. So this I can imagine being the first thing that I want to look at. I can see we've got some lovely, letter spacing going on here and line spacing. I'm actually going to just reduce those down just for the sake of I'm trying to make this its own unit so that it feels really strong. And at the moment, all of the space between the line spacing and the letter spacing is meaning that it's sort of starting to drift apart. So to get that really strong message to go with the theme of this particular piece is I'm just going to tighten that right up. I might even, because we've got he's using caps here, we can get quite a tight line spacing because we don't have what are called ascenders and descenders, which is the little bits that drop down. So a P or a Y that drop down to the next line. When we have all caps, we can actually make that quite tight. And what you can do now is we can go, woo, we can make this much bigger. And this is going to just allow for that focus to really be brought in where it needs to be. So you can see already my eye is definitely drawn to that first part. Here, what I'm going to start looking at again is hierarchy and consistency. So I'm actually going to take this copy here. Let's make sure they can do it safely and put it as part of this copy. So consolidating this, I feel like that's one message. So putting it into one section. And I actually think that we can probably go down in size. So what I'm really trying to do is get that contrast and hierarchy, that this is number one, and then our secondary message is coming in here. Another thing in terms of consistency is we've got a sentence case, and then we have, we've got caps on everything, and then we have sentence case here. I would probably make sure we're keeping things consistent. I'm going to keep saying consistency through this whole makeover, because I think that just makes it was almost reading like a heading rather than, a sentence. So again, probably, I don't know, you could leave all of the exclamation points, but I think we could also consolidate that down, because instead of using the exclamation, it might be something where if you're trying to draw attention, so you can use things like bolds or colors or underlines to kind of bring a sense of importance to particular words. So, you know, if I put an underline on R, suddenly that reads a little differently. So you could just read it, our kids are going to attend parties this summer. And I think if you put that emphasis on R, it's like, you know, it really tells the story of like, you're not going to actually be able to stop them partying, but let's make sure they party safe. So I feel like it just adds to the message. And you could even like maybe safely is another keyword, and you could underline that. Now, Jason's done a really lovely job of this sort of center alignment, but I'm wondering whether we can get a little bit more space in our design if maybe we can kind of start to actually, what I'm thinking is actually have two columns instead of, it's really easy to always go for the center alignment, but sometimes you can get extra space when you go from one column to two columns, because you can actually fit a bit more into your design. So here also I've noticed he's kind of got a creamy color, which I might change maybe to white. I also might change it to heavy. So the reason I'm doing that again is, let's see. I'm trying to keep it all the same font, but I'm using those different weights, which is like when we talk about weights of a font, we're talking about like, is it a thin font? Is it a medium, bold? All of those are called weights. So I'm playing with those to give the emphasis rather than having to change fonts each time. So I think this could work really nicely. I might just, again, just tighten up that line spacing, which if you're wondering, if you want to adjust those, if you go up to the spacing button up the top here, and we have letter spacing, which is like the spaces between the letters. And then we have line spacing, which is like how far each individual line is from each other. So you can use them in lots of different ways to create lots of different effects, but I tend to like when I'm creating a design to think about when we're talking about hierarchy is I'm trying to create three really distinct areas so that I knows I'm going to read this section first, then I'm going to read this section. And this is almost the sort of, you know, adding some extra information in there. So by doing this, we have now got some nice hierarchy. We know which direction we want to read, what we read first. I might even bring this up so it's exactly the same height as this guy over there, which again is that consistency. So we've got a really nice line in there. Already, I think we're getting a lot more impact by having some really good contrast in size, and also this negative space is working around. So the last things that I would probably look at here with this design is dealing with this section down the bottom. So logos are, when you have to do posters and you have a lot of sponsor logos, it's really tricky. It really is. What I'm probably going to do is grab these guys, and I'm just going to reduce them in size a little bit, just because it's going to let me. I think I have to zoom in here. There we go. So what I'm looking at now is this alignment down the side so that we kind of can sit in. We've got these margins on the sides, and I'm just working in with those margins so that we're getting some nice consistency. I like what Jason's done here with using this panel to kind of make this a separate section. But in this case, with these logos, I think it might help if we have something kind of behind them. And it's tricky because some of these logos, obviously, we're not getting the color behind. So if we actually just drop to a white band, I think it's going to work a little bit better in that it just kind of neatens it up, makes it very clear this is sort of separate to the rest of the design. These are obviously sponsors. And the last little bit is, again, just looking at consistency here. I took down the letter spacing in all of the other ones. So I'm going to have 0 on all of them. And I think that's a really nice, you know, this is the last piece of the puzzle that we're going to read. And so it's the smallest, and it is naturally where the eye would end after it's gone through the design. You might want to add, you know, you can add in some extra nuance in this little area down the bottom. Maybe, you know, we have this is bold, maybe we can unbold that. So, you know, it just brings a little bit of extra attention to the Struggle of Love Foundation. So we're not missing who this is by. And if we zoom, whoa, sorry, everybody. There we go. So we're looking, the last part is this bit at the top. So we've kept the essence of the design. It's like this really bright, strong message. But we've just kind of tidied it up a little bit. We're using our hierarchy and our contrast. The last little bit, I think you could leave this as is, which is in just centering it up, making sure it's centered. Or another thing you might want to look at is perhaps, again, simplifying so there's not quite so much happening on the page, like different angles, keep everything at the same angle. Maybe we can actually, because I think it reads, if you have Party Safe Summer, maybe we can bring in a color here. Again, I'd probably take that effect off, and we could go up in size. Again, we're just looking at simplifying. And so that's where I would get to if I was going to take Jason's design and just apply those key principles to it. So we can have a little look back. This was our original design. We've kept the essence, you know, that's such a great image that he's chosen, such great colors. I really like the, you know, the way he has formatted the type, but by really looking at hierarchy, so making sure our main message is really large, and then grouping like information together, we have created a design that, you know, I think is just that little bit more powerful and directs the user's eye. All right. Did anyone have any questions about that?
Fantastic. Yes, there are a few questions. Jason is now on the call and he says, I love it.
Yay.
Hina has a question. In the line spacing options, there is an anchor text box option. And what does that do?
Oh, okay. That's really interesting. The anchor text box option, which is up here, essentially is telling you which way, when you type more information in, it's going to go. So at the moment it's pointing down. So when I add extra information, that text box is going down. If I actually change that one and it went to go upwards, you'll see it now goes up. If you are doing a design that, say, like this, that you're sending off to print, and that's the end of it, it doesn't really matter what it's set on. What that setting is really good for is if you were giving this design to someone else, you know, maybe to your community, and saying, you know, amend it in some way, add some information, it means that it's really usable for someone who may be using it as a template. So in this case, like kickbacks against violence, for this design, if I was passing it on for someone that I thought might change, you know, maybe this is a template for a poster design that's going to change for different events, I would set that to the center, because it means if they add an extra line, it actually still works without them having to move that text box. Does that make sense?
Total sense. That's great. Thank you. Yeah, Hina says makes sense. Thanks. Jason's stoked with how it's really brought the message to life. And Jill is asking, would you make a little bit of space between the columns so that the shore is not touching the...
That is a very good idea. That, yes, I would put that in. And I would, at this point, I would be going in and, you know, showing my margins. I would actually knock this guy over so that I've got this really perfect alignment all the way, which gives you a little bit of extra space in there. Good call.
Great. That's it for questions at the moment.
Excellent. Oh, thank you, Jason. It's like such a great, as soon as I saw it in the Facebook, I was like, I'd really want to work on that design because it sounds like an amazing initiative and you've done such a great job. And I just knew there was those tiny little tweaks and we could, you know, push it to this level. So thank you so much. It's nerve-wracking having people working on your design. So that is amazing. So I might move on to our next design. So this is a design by Tia Bierman Ward. I hope I'm saying that correctly. It says, have you ever tried Perfectly Posh? Are you interested in free samples? I am going to guess that this is for some sort of gift service or balloon service. I'm hoping I'm right. We are going to look at this design and see how we can apply. So I've got my cheat sheet. I'm going to be looking specifically at balance, hierarchy, and alignment to try and get this one looking even more beautiful than it is. So I'm going to start off, make a copy so we can go back and have a look. So the first thing I would look at here is hierarchy. So at the moment, I think there's a lot of information playing at similar levels. So have you ever tried Perfectly Posh? Are you interested in free samples? My eye probably goes to free samples first. And there's a lot to read. So I'm going to try and consolidate that down a little bit. I think Perfectly Posh for me feels like the, oops, I'm going to move this. Might move this guy over here just for now and send him to the back. I feel like Perfectly, like, and also that it's 2 questions. I almost want to just have a really strong heading, and I'm guessing that that would be Perfectly Posh because I'm assuming that is the name of the, I'm just going to, the name of the service. And then really just bring this up in size. Let's go really big. Whoa. So we have Perfectly Posh. And then, you know, maybe are you interested in free samples? And for this one, which was why I was hoping I'd be able to have a chat with Tia, is like, I would always be thinking about what your call to action is. Like, what do you want the viewer to do when they get to, when they look at your design? So I'm assuming this is probably a call to action to a website or to a phone number, because I don't know. I'm going to just say, I'm guessing it's perfectlyposh.com. I'm not sure. You know, are you interested in free samples? Or maybe even if you are interested in free samples, visit, and then you can say the name. Here, again, I'm going to consolidate down our sizing. I think, you know, we should make it all the same color, all the same size. That's probably a little bit too small. We'll go up a bit in size, hey. All right, so now I feel like I have size is helping me with hierarchy. I read Perfectly Posh first, and then I have my next piece of information. At the moment, this type here is quite hard to read. This is a beautiful font, the playlist script. You know, it has that sense of painterly and it matches the illustration style she's chosen. it has a kind of perfectly posh feel. But I think for actually legible body copy that you want your viewers to read, it's probably quite tricky, and it works better for headlines. So I'd probably look at, like, could we look at something that's a little bit straighter? Maybe we'll try Montserrat. Just guessing here. And again, you could do caps for free samples, or it might be something where, because I'm trying to just keep it, again, that consistency, I might just use a bold to bring attention to that, which means making the rest of this unbolded. It would help if I could spell properly. And maybe perfectly posh, it would make sense for that, the website, which is your call to action, to be brought out. And maybe that is where we start to bring in, you know, maybe we're bringing in a color to really bring that out. So now I feel like I have all the elements that I want to use in the design. I've created some hierarchy. I've made it a little bit easier to read this information. For me now, it's all about kind of looking at alignment and where it's all going to sit. So we did have a center alignment happening, but I think that's quite tricky with the amount of elements that we have. So I was wondering, I can see some Q&A. Is there any questions, Jess, that I can answer while I'm chatting away?
No, they were just saying thank you for some of the tips and things.
Oh, good. Okay. So what I'm going to try and do here is actually, we've got quite a few elements too. So in this case, I'm going to, again, trying to reduce how many things are happening, so that we can keep our eyes focused on the most important thing, which is the message. So we probably, for now, I'm going to lose that guy. Not sure about the gift. It would depend on if it was a gift service or a balloon service as to whether I'd keep it. So unfortunately, because I don't know, I am wondering, I might even, just to give a bit more space, actually separate these guys. The easiest way to do it is actually copy it twice, and then I can delete it from here and delete this. This is so I'm not losing my formatting. Just so I can get a little bit, because that little bit of space kind of gives negative space around perfectlyposh.com, which I feel like, whether that's a phone number or whatever it is that your call to action is, just gives it a little bit more space. And then we're doing this nice alignment down the left-hand side, which gives us, you know, clear area for our images to sit in. I'm going to send you to the back. Again, I feel like we have a girl, we have balloons, we have another balloon, and we have a gift. For now, I'm going to remove the gift. Obviously, it would really depend on whether the gift was the most important thing. And I'm going to just assume it's a balloon service. And I'm going to actually bring this right up so that we have just a little bit more. So it's just a bit larger. And we can just reduce this guy down a little bit. A bit larger, and just means that we have a lot more emphasis and there's a lot more impact if we bring up the size of that illustration. So I'd always say to you guys, if you're using an element of photo, don't be afraid to go big and crop, because it can actually help you kind of navigate the space in your design. And by doing this, we have, you know, a really strong focal point, and then we've got this nice clear space on the side. The next thing when I'm looking at that, now that I've made those two bigger, is that I actually even want Perfectly Posh even bigger, because I want it to be the most important thing. The only trouble is when I go larger, it's obviously going to sit over these balloons, which isn't quite what I want. So let's have a look if we stack it. And I think that, you know, I think we've got some really nice hierarchy happening in the size. I would even look at tightening our line spacing up. This one's a tricky one, because if you see, if I go in here, you can see that what's happening is it's running over the E, and that's not, you know, great for legibility, but it does mean this sits in really nice and tight. So one of the ways you could look at this, I'll keep my letter spacing 0. Maybe I've gone a little bit too much there, I think, is we could use color. So we could look at kind of bringing in, there's this lovely pink and black style of going in. You know, in here, what's interesting is her dress is sort of a deep charcoal. So I'm going to not go fully black. But by making that a different color, now you actually can really see that H running over the E, and they look like they're kind of interlocking and one's on top rather than just getting confused. Looking at this now, I think we have some really a strong focal point. We have a really strong call to action. We've made sure that our body copy and the thing that we want our viewer to read the most is in a really legible font, keeping our sort of fun display font for the heading. I think that's looking really great. The last thing, if you wanted to, it would really depend. You could look at, you know, bringing maybe this pinky color into the design, or I'm just playing around now, see what color I like best. It's funny, we've noticed that blush pink designs do really, really well in Canva. It's at the moment, blush pink is the way to go. If we did do this, it does give it a nice sort of strong feel, but I am going to have to make this pink a little bit darker. So just going into my color, document colors, if you click on this guy, then it means you can kind of, I like doing it this way because I can drag it around and actually see it changing and decide, then I can decide exactly where I think the color should be. To my head have decided there. And then we can make sure perfectly posh is the same. We could even, as my last little thing is, because I really want that perfectly posh website to be, because we could add in like Montserrat semi-bold. We could just go a little bit more emphasis there. And that's where I've got to with that design. So that was, we came from this, which I think, as I said, like beautiful color choice, beautiful imagery and choice working together. Really nice font choice, but I think what we needed to do is look at legibility with our font and particularly hierarchy. So making sure, again, the viewer knows where to look first, the most important information first, and then making a really strong call to action. And then after we did that, we looked at alignment. So, you know, we've got center alignment here, not quite working, not quite in the center of the design. And then we needed to figure out how to get some extra space for these images. So that's when we looked at maybe going for a left alignment, giving ourselves some more negative space and actually bringing those images larger so that they can really sing, because it's a really beautiful choice that you've got there.
Beautiful.
Excellent. I would love any questions, comments.
We do have a question. Michelle asks, do you recommend that we make more than one design to convey the same message? Would you just stick with one design?
For me, it would really depend on what you were creating and where it was going. So, you know, if you were doing you know, poster series that was going to be pasted up in the street, that can be really effective to have multiples of the same design, you know, changing colors, changing imagery, because they're all going to sit together as a suite. So in that case, I would say that could be a really good option. If this was an ad, say going into, you know, magazine, you may do it as a series, but I would, if you were going to do it as a series, I would be wanting there to be a reason that there's multiples. Like, are you telling a slightly different story for each? Is there a different copy that goes across each? If it's literally just the same design and then you just do variations of it, I would question as to whether that was necessary. So for me, it's always when I'm designing, what is the message I'm trying to get across and what is the best way to do that?
Brilliant. And then just a comment, and I think this was more before you changed the color of the website name, but just that it was quite light before, and for such an important thing, is it okay to have it be quite a light color still?
Yeah, I would definitely be wanting to get that stronger. So which is why I started looking at kind of pushing this color down. So we could even go stronger still. But yeah, really, really good point, because that is our call to action. It's where we want people to end, and it's the most important bit. So that's why I was looking at, you know, do we want to employ bolds? We're also employing, you could use size in this case. So you could go up in size for perfectly posh and then down in size, which also is going to add to that sense of that being super important. Good call. Beautiful.
That's all the questions for now for this one.
Fantastic. All right, let's move on to our third design. This was a beautiful design by Mary. It is for channel art, so for a YouTube channel. She has picked a really gorgeous image. I'm definitely starting to see a story here. I can kind of, it's very evocative for this idea of building resilience, cultivating purpose. You can tell that it's definitely in that wellness space, and there's a sense of kind of blossoming and, you know, progressing as a person. I'm guessing again, but that's what I'm getting from this design. So what I'm going to look at for this particular design with my little cheat sheet to remind me is I'm going to really focus on negative space. I'm going to look at font pairings, and I'm going to look at contrast. All right, let's go ahead and copy this one so we can work and go back and see our before. So the first thing I'm looking at here is just actually using the whole artboard that's set up. So this size for channel art has been set up. It should match its use case. So in this case, this looks like it's just sitting on the artboard. I'm going to kind of take up the whole space. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually just set the image as the background, just in case any of you don't know how to do that. If you right click on your image, it will bring up this little dialog box, and you can set image as background. And what's nice about that is now it's sort of stuck there, and I don't have to worry about it moving every time I'm kind of trying to move the type. I don't know if that's ever happened to any of you guys, but it can be frustrating when you've got an image that's really large sitting in the background and you're always kind of accidentally grabbing it. So that's the first thing that I'm doing, is visualizing our whole space. The next thing I would look at is, you know, again, alignment. I'm gonna stick with this center alignment because I think it works really well for, you know, the user case for this, which is channel art. Makes sense that you have it in the center. Looking at hierarchy again. So becoming unstuck to me is really the, you know, the hero headline. So I'm just trying to get that bigger. I'm also giving it title case just again to give it that sense of this is the name of the channel. And then we've got some good size difference between the two. I can see what she's doing here with this this white panel that she's added some transparency on. I can see that's to really make, she's trying to get that contrast between the background and the type. So I think that's working. You could even look at, you know, is it something that you apply to the full background, so that we're really, what I'm trying to do here is drop the background to the back, sort of flatten it down so that the type can come to the front and be the hero. That's probably a little bit too much transparency, but we can go down and you can actually play. So obviously when there's none there, it's very hard to read that writing because it's going over a very busy image. As we bring it up, you can see just like magic that, that type really coming to the foreground. But what I'm wondering is, like, could we even put a color in? Like, could we, I'm just going to get a color that I'm guessing is from, like, you know, somewhere in here with, really just playing, but I'm trying to get the kind of colors that are already in the image, this sort of purpley color. Because again, by treating that image, we're sort of flattening down the contrast, which again is going to help the type. By doing this though, I would think I've actually, it might actually work better if these guys were white. So this is all about this contrast, and then we can, it's I'm constantly playing with this transparency and the color to try and get a really good contrast between the two. So might even, maybe this goes down. And you can see, I think we've still got that beautiful image, but it's treated in a way that's going to help this type really kind of come to the forefront. I think we could even go larger with this guy. Maybe I'm just trying to think, make it really large. Now that's not working because of this ascender and descender, because again, if I try to make them, oops, we don't want to work with that. We try to bring them in together. We've got that K and the G sitting over each other. Sometimes that can be about picking a font. So you'd be surprised when you're trying to, I call it a type lockup. When you're trying to create like that little unit, which is almost like when you're doing a logo, you're trying to get it to sit together as a type unit. Just trying different fonts can be really helpful because they all sit together differently. So I often spend a long time just like literally trying out different fonts and going through and seeing what I can do. So maybe what we'd look, in this case, I'm going to go up here and go over, we've got lots of little presets, which is really a handy tip when you're looking for fonts. So we've got paragraph, sans serif, serif, modern, bold, lots of different ones. What I'm going to do is look at display headings. Now, a display heading is the term, like if you haven't heard it before, a display font is one that works really well for headings. It's got a lot of character. It's probably not going to work for your body copy because it's, you know, they're really big and dramatic kind of fonts. So I can look through I think she's done a really lovely choice of this font. It's kind of got a whimsical sense. It matches her imagery. There's the sense of kind of femininity and fluidity. I don't want to undo that, but I will try. So I might try something like even up here. I always say don't pick the first one, but I'm actually going to pick the first one because I think it's got a femininity to it, but it's just a little bit bolder. You know, that thick and thin that you see here just gives it a lot of personality. I think it still has that sense of, you know, there's a quirkiness to it, there's a femininity to it, but it's just a lot stronger and bolder. And as a really nice bonus win is this G now fits really nicely in with that K. So I would just go through, you know, if I'm picking fonts, I'll literally just try them all and see what, you know, what's working for me. What do I think has the right feeling? So like this I quite like, but I think it's too thin. And I think something like that, just that thickness, because I'm having it sit on this background, I really do want to create that contrast. So now I think we've got a really lovely design where it's quite clear what our headline of our channel is. Then I'm just going to spend some time now having a look at this secondary information. We've got ED recovery, building resilience, cultivating purpose. Again, I'm going to look at consistency. We've got you know, sentence case here. So I'm going to do that for all of them because we have it on some and not the others. So that's that. Again, trying to get consistency. We could have and more, but I almost don't think you need it. I think, you know, recovery, building resilience, cultivating purpose seem quite, you know, broad, and it gives you an idea of what this channel is going to be about. So I think that that just helps kind of clean it up a little bit. I can see here Mary's used asterisks, which usually is used for when you want to add some extra information. So usually if you see an asterisk, you'll go and look for, you know, like the footnote that will give you more information. So what I think she's trying to do there is probably use, you know, like a bullet point. If you actually hit option 8, it will give you a bullet point, which means it's nicely sits in the middle. It definitely looks like a bullet point as opposed to, you know, an asterisk where I may be confused. But but I have a feeling that's what Mary was trying to do there. So option 8 is a winner for you guys. So I actually think that's looking really lovely. Like, I think that would be, I would definitely go to that channel. I would think that there would be some information for me. The very last thing I would look at, I think you could look at it just like this, but let's just try one more thing, which is, again, I keep talking about like that body copy or smaller text and legibility, and these sort of more display fonts are harder to read. So you could, again, I often think about when I'm pairing a font, like opposites attract. If they're too similar, it's sort of like you're not sure, should it have been the same font, should it not? So in this case, I might use like complete opposites. So I've used this sort of feminine serif display font. Maybe we could look at something more kind of corporate or sans serif, because we used it before. Let's see what Montserrat looks like. It's just a really nice, it's nice sans serif. It's very round, so it's really warm, even though it is that kind of corporate, like more corporate modern font, but it is super round, so it does have a really humanist feel, really you know, welcoming. And you could look at, you know, again, I'm thinking about contrast. So we've got two very different fonts together. Maybe I would employ caps here. So if you want to change something to uppercase without having to retype it, again, you can click on your little 3 dots, go here and hit uppercase, and it magically does it for you, which is great. So what I'm really looking at here, and maybe we want to go semi-bold just to get a bit more. Then we can go down in size. And in this case, I often talk about, like, I've been tightening up the line spacing. Let me just show you guys what happens if you go the other way. Sometimes for this sort of information, just giving it a little bit more space works really nicely, because it's not body copy. It's not a big chunk of, you know, paragraph I'm reading. It's quite small. It has the ability to, you know, be tracked out a little bit more and to still be legible. So I think this works. I think this works as well. Maybe a little bit more legible. The thing that I really liked about this design is I can really see, we talked about the question about, like, would you do multiple designs? And I can imagine with something like channel art, maybe you're wanting to adapt it and change it quite often, keep people, you know, intrigued and interested. This one's so easily adapted. So if we copied this, you know, maybe this is one, we could make a series of these simply by, I'm just going to move this, just by changing the image. Let's have a look over. I want a new photo. I'll go over into elements and I can say, you know, maybe we want just more flowers. You know, we could do a whole series of different flowers, flower backgrounds. So what I'm looking for now is I want one that's going to match a similar style. So if I kind of dragged in something that was completely different, it would be a little bit, maybe a little bit jarring. I don't want to do cherry blossoms because we've already got cherry blossoms. Just trying to see what I think would work. Let's try. Oops, I quite like this guy. I don't know if it'll work. No. Let's keep going. Lots of cherry blossoms. So what I'm looking for now is I'm trying to think of something. Oh, that's a good one. Something that's kind of going to be able to be flat in the background, and act almost like a texture rather than too much of an image. And then we could like look at, you know, maybe we do, I'm just going to guess here. Again, this is where I just start to play with colors and I need to see how it's working in terms of color. So you can see now, you know, we've got 1, we've got 2, and then you could have like even 1 more, and they start to work really nicely as a series. Okay, well, let's just, this is a nice guy. Let's try him. And then, you know, maybe we go a completely different color. So you can see now, that would be really lovely. You could see over time how this design, you know, could adapt and evolve. So now I've done so many, but we've come from here. So I think she's got a really lovely feeling. It's super evocative, beautiful image choice. By employing the idea of negative space and hierarchy. So in that case, when I'm talking about negative space, it's really about, you know, we had this line that's kind of holding everything really tightly together. By removing that and then using contrast, so making the background flatten to the back and the type jump to the front, we've got a lot more space around these elements, which just gives them the room to breathe, particularly for this design where I think it's meant to be, you know, that sensibility of blossoming and open. We don't want a constrained feeling. We want a lot of space. And then it's about font choice. So again, that contrast, picking two different fonts that are really quite different, making sure our, you know, type is legible when it's smaller and there's more of it, making sure we pick a really, you know, evocative font. So making sure you try lots of fonts to see how they lock together. So when you're doing a headline, it becomes a unit. So remembering how the K fits in with the G. So making sure you don't just go to the first font, try lots of different ones out. And then, you know, we've stuck with the center alignment, which I think was working really lovely. And that's our third design. So thank you so much, Mary. It's really beautiful. I'm really keen to see what you have on your channel. I'll have to go check it out. Any questions?
Fantastic. We do have a few minutes for questions, and we do have a few questions. So we had someone saying, I love getting the keyboard shortcuts. Could you just show us in the question mark menu down in the bottom right, where you can access a whole bunch of keyboard shortcuts? So if you want to know more Canva shortcuts, right down in the bottom right-hand corner is a little question mark, and you can look up shortcuts in there. So if you actually just type in shortcuts there, keyboard shortcuts, and
I love keyboard shortcuts as well. So that's so good.
So those of you that love keyboard shortcuts, there you go. Feast. Fantastic. And one very last quick question. When you're writing the website address on a design, would you ever do it in italic, or would you stay away from italics for web addresses?
I would probably stay away from it. I tend to, I think most people think of an italic. I would just be using them if it was, I'm trying to bring extra emphasis within a body of text. So they are actually harder to read. So even though it does add emphasis, it is actually harder for a user to read an italic. And because a website is like one of the most important things, that's why I would probably tend to use either a bold or a, you know, or a color. Color's a really great way if you wanted to kind of bring out a particular word or piece of information as well. So
yes, fantastic, very useful information. Well, thank you so much, Karin, for taking us through those beautiful designs. Loads of love in the chat talking about how beautiful those designs are, since you did all your beautiful work on them, and how enjoyable it is actually just watching you bring it all together as well. So thank you for sharing your time.
My pleasure. I just really big thank you to the 3 participants who gave their work. It's so you know, generous of you so that we can all learn together. So thanks.
Absolutely. And we do have a little treat for those of you that have joined us live today. We have a free trial of Canva Pro. So if you want access to some of the Pro features, you can use the link I'm about to put in the chat for you now, which will take you to a site where you can register your account for a trial of Canva Pro. So give it a go. And of course, check out more workshops at canva.com/Canva-space, where all of the workshops are coming up every month, including more design makeovers. So a lot of people have asked if they can submit designs to be reworked as well, absolutely, just join the design circle and keep an eye out for the next call out for designs. We'd love you to submit your designs.
Excellent. And I'm just going to spruik one more thing, because I did mention Canva Creators. I'm going to put in the chat just an expression of interest page. So if anyone wants to know more about that program, I know I only mentioned it really briefly, but I'm just popping it in the chat now so that if you want to read a little bit more about it, you can.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to wrap it up and say thank you very much, everybody, for joining. Thank you, Karin, for taking us through that today. And we look forward to seeing you at the next design makeover. Bye.
Bye.